In the 19th century, while the rest of Europe was busy building factories, laying train tracks, and drafting constitutions, Russia was taking a different approach. The Romanov czars ruled as absolute autocrats, hoarding immense wealth and ignoring any modern ideas about human rights or sharing power. At the very bottom of this lopsided society were the peasants. Even when they were technically freed from serfdom, they were handed an impossible deal. They had to buy the land they worked, trapping them in crippling 49-year cycles of debt. They remained completely destitute, working themselves to the bone just to survive. And the man in charge of fixing this broken system was Tsar Nicholas II. Nicholas firmly believed he was chosen by God to be Russia's ultimate father figure. The problem was he was entirely unprepared for the job, admitting himself that he knew absolutely nothing about the business of ruling. That lack of political instinct became obvious immediately. During a celebration for his coronation, a massive stampede for free food left nearly 1,500 starving peasants dead. Instead of staying to mourn or show support, Nicholas went ahead with his scheduled plans to attend a lavish party with French diplomats. You have a ruler with limitless power who cannot read the room, sitting on top of millions of starving, exhausted citizens. That is a society practically begging for a match to be struck. That match arrived in January 1905. A handsome Orthodox priest named Father Gapon led a crowd of workers and their families toward the Winter Palace in St. Petersburg. They weren't armed and they weren't trying to overthrow the government. They just wanted to hand-deliver a petition asking for better working conditions and basic civil rights. Nicholas wasn't even home, but the imperial soldiers guarding the palace panicked. They opened fire on the unarmed crowd, killing hundreds of civilians and wounding hundreds more in a tragedy that became known as Bloody Sunday. The explosion of 1905 was the inevitable result of three converging forces: an impoverished peasantry, an incompetent Tsar, and a peaceful petition that met a violent end. Watching all of this unfold from exile was a middle-class intellectual named Vladimir Lenin. Lenin had a massive chip on his shoulder after the state executed his older brother, and he viewed the peaceful petitioning of the Tsar as a complete waste of time. Lenin was so rigid in his Marxist beliefs that he split the Russian communist movement entirely. He formed his own faction called the Bolsheviks, meaning the majority. If you wanted to be a Bolshevik, you had to be totally loyal to Lenin and his specific vision of an armed, violent worker uprising. Bloody Sunday shattered the long-held illusion that the Tsar was a protective father figure who just needed to hear his people's cries. The public stopped asking for favors and started looking for ways to tear the whole system down. The Tsarist government survived the 1905 uprising and even managed a few minor economic recoveries. But then the calendar hit 1914, and Russia was pulled into the absolute meat grinder of World War I. The conflict exposed every single flaw in the Russian state. The military was outmatched and undersupplied, routinely sending conscripted peasants marching to the front lines without basic necessities, like winter boots or even proper rifles. While the military was collapsing, things at the palace were getting downright weird. The royal family fell under the spell of Grigory Rasputin, an uneducated, scandalous mystic who somehow cured the Tsar's son's life-threatening hemophilia. Rasputin was famous for his heavy drinking and wild parties. Having this erratic wizard practically living with the Tsar's wife while Nicholas was off managing a failing war effort destroyed whatever remaining respect the Romanovs had left among the public and the nobility. World War I proved that the autocracy couldn't even manage the basic task of keeping its citizens alive. The grinding casualties at the front and the absolute circus in the capital turned public frustration into sheer, burning desperation. By February 1917, that desperation boiled over. It started with women protesting for bread in Petrograd and quickly snowballed into a massive general strike. When the government ordered the military to clear the streets, the soldiers finally said no, refusing to shoot and choosing to join them. Stripped of his military protection, Nicholas had no moves left. He abdicated the throne, vaporizing a 300-year-old monarchy and leaving a temporary provisional government struggling to hold the country together. But the new government made a fatal miscalculation. They decided to keep Russia in World War I. The devastating casualties kept mounting, and the severe food shortages continued. And Vladimir Lenin saw the perfect opportunity to pack his bags, return from exile, and exploit the chaos. Lenin provided the uncompromising ideology, but he needed muscle. He got it from Leon Trotsky, a brilliant strategic organizer who took local, elected worker councils, known as Soviets, and weaponized them into an organized, armed militia loyal to the Bolshevik cause. In October 1917, they made their move. The armed Bolshevik militias violently stormed the main government buildings in Petrograd. They didn't bother asking for permission to rule. They just took over, winning over the exhausted public with a very simple three-word promise: peace, land, and bread. The two revolutions of 1917 represent a total break from the past. In February, it was a farewell to the Tsar and the old imperial system. By October, it was the Bolsheviks' turn to violently step in and completely fill the massive power vacuum. But claiming power in the capital and actually running a country the size of Russia are two very different things. The October takeover immediately ignited a savage multi-year civil war between the Bolshevik Red Army and the anti-communist White Army. To make sure the White Army had no monarch to rally behind, the Bolsheviks made a ruthless calculation. In the dead of night, they secretly executed Tsar Nicholas and his entire family, guaranteeing the Romanov dynasty could never return. After millions of casualties and years of brutal fighting, the Red Army emerged victorious. In 1922, the dust finally settled, and the Soviet Union, the USSR, was officially born. This map shows the massive geopolitical victory. The fragmented Russian Empire was replaced by an enormous, centralized bloc, the first major communist state. This terrified capitalist countries, sparking a fierce rivalry of proxy wars, nuclear standoffs, and the space race. The fall of the Romanovs shifted the trajectory of global history. The collision of systemic neglect and revolutionary zeal forged a militarized ideological superpower, a state that would dictate the geopolitics of the entire 20th century.
To watch more interesting videos like this, please like, subscribe to the channel, and share this video as widely as possible. Thank you.